Welcome to the Franklin County NC Podcast. I'm James Hicks, and this is a podcast about Franklin County, North Carolina. On our broadcast, we hope you will learn a few things that you didn't know about Franklin County, North Carolina, plus some helpful tips for you in your daily lives. Today, I'm joined by Will Doerfer, who is the Assistant County Manager for Franklin County. We're going to learn a little bit more about his role and the opioid settlement funds the county will be receiving over the next 18 years. So, welcome into the podcast. Will, how are you doing?
Doing great. Thank you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. This will, unfortunately, some of our recordings will be a little bit in advance. So a lot of times I was having to tell guests, well, don't mention Christmas. Your episode won't come until the New Year. So we're by the time this one comes out, we'll be clear into the New Year. So that's good. We had to discuss with certain topics. Like, I know it's going to be a tendency to talk about Thanksgiving or Christmas, but we're going to be through that by the time we get this one out. So, but New Year's, you can wish someone a Happy New Year up until December 31st. So,
that's right.
So, but this one will come out well before that. So I have slightly introduced our topic for today. But first, before we get into that, we want to dig a little bit into your background and say, why don't we start with how long have you been with Franklin County and where did you come from?
Thank you. So I have been with Franklin County in February. It'll be 2 years. So just under 2 years. Prior to that, I was a town manager in Liberty, North Carolina, which is middle of the state, Randolph County, sort of between Greensboro and Burlington, near Asheboro, and was there for a little over 3 years. Just a small town, a little bit smaller than Lewisburg. And focused on grants and the sewer infrastructure, water infrastructure. It was an old town built on manufacturing, and so all that stuff was really, really old and needed a lot of help. So that was my main focus. It was a full service police department, a fire department, Parks and Rec, library, all that kind of stuff. So,
okay, and you did a lot with grants there. I know you also have a pretty big little chunk of grant. Well, not chunk, but you did some grants for a while. So You're sort of our grant guru of sorts. I know you're the first person I go to whenever grants get brought up.
I definitely have some experience with the grants. I worked for a consulting firm that did grants mostly through Division of Water Infrastructure and part of Parks and Rec Trust Fund. So I do have some experience with that and enjoy it. I mean, it's it's a good way to reduce the burden on the taxpayers in the community, spreads it out a little bit, and can help accelerate projects as long as you know what you're doing and know what you're going after. It can be a very helpful tool.
So I want to ask this question. It's in two parts. And so you didn't go far enough back because you're not a native North Carolinian, neither am I, but Ohio, somewhere in
right.
Ohio,
yeah,
somewhere up there. Ohio is just one massive piece of land with a bunch of people.
It is, yeah.
So where are you from in Ohio?
Yeah, geography. So I'm from Northeast Ohio, a little town called Worcester, and it's spelled like rooster, but not pronounced like rooster. It's Worcester. There's a College of Worcester there. It's near the Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio, and grew up on a small family farm. We had pigs and fat steers. Fun fact, I took pigs to the fair all the way till high school, I guess. I have several first place showmanship trophies, so I'm pretty proud of that. And played football, and I left Ohio shortly after I turned 18, joined the Army. I actually signed up for the Army when I was 17. My parents had to sign my application. Went from Ohio straight to Columbus, Georgia in August. Didn't understand a thing that was being said and had never felt that kind of heat and humidity in my entire life. So that's a culture shock.
When we're going back, military service, I'll just jump in too with the January, even though we don't know when this will come out, but you are our January employee veteran spotlight for January 2023 person. It's a thing that the county started. It started in October, and it's highlighting employees who work for the county who happen to also be veterans. So we got a couple more coming after that, and that's featured on the Veterans Services page, and we'll do some social media throughout the month. But how long were you in the Army?
I was in the Army for a little over 4 years, 1999 to 2003.
Okay. And what did you do? I asked this not really knowing where this is going, but sometimes people have positions and ranks and very specialty things. What did you do?
I was, as I currently am, I was a generalist, I guess. I was the infantryman, so we did a little bit of everything. And I was in the 82nd, so I jumped out of airplanes. Really enjoyed it. Spent some time in Kosovo on a peacekeeping mission, and then some time in Iraq on a not peacekeeping mission. And after that, thought that was about enough of that, so I got out and went to college.
Okay, and you went to?
I went to Guilford College for
my
undergrad.
Okay,
and then after that, I went to Appalachian State University for my Master's of Public Administration.
Okay, so that's how you got to North Carolina.
Yes.
Sort of.
I was stationed in Fort Bragg, which is in Fayetteville.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, and just kind of stuck around after I got out.
Stuck around, yeah.
Yep.
So what brought you, what stood out about Franklin County, when you look at almost 2 years ago, what was it about coming to Franklin County that you said, oh, that might be a thing? Because you were in more municipal, and I know even this is across the board, county and city can be very different in certain ways. And if you get used to city, I came from city to county, but I've jumped back and forth a couple of times in some things. But what was it about Franklin County, and you wanted to come and be a part of this?
Yeah, sure. So good question. I actually started in county. My first job out of graduate school was with Hyde County, North Carolina, which is on the coast. It includes Ocracoke Island. Most people don't know where Hyde County is, but they know where Ocracoke is. It's the quote-unquote pearl of the Outer Banks. So started out in Hyde County and just enjoyed the county government. It's a lot more collaborative, and I'm more of a collaborative leader. I don't like to be directive, and so it's just a better fit for me, county over municipal government. Unfortunately, it's not terribly easy to get into county government, so you got to cut your teeth somewhere. So for me, that happened to be Liberty. So I did 3 years there, as I said, and then when I saw the Franklin County Assistant County Manager job open, I thought, well, what a good opportunity to get into county government. It's small, medium-sized county, fast-growing, Halo County. Actually, one of the things that excited me the most about it was that it had water and sewer. It's one of my favorite services that are provided, and so I just thought I would give it a shot.
What is a Halo County?
So Halo County is the counties that are surrounding Wake County.
Okay.
And I think they probably refer to them Mecklenburg County as well.
Okay.
Just the general geographic area that is benefiting from the growth of the Wake County.
The Greater Triangle area,
the Greater
essentially.
Triangle area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it seemed like a really good opportunity to get in and not be the chief administrative officer, but learn from somebody and work in a growing county.
Okay. And what is the assistant county manager? What do you do? What do you sum that up? I know it can be kind of a lot of different things, but a lot of people probably don't know, what you would do day to day.
Right. So day to day, really, the most frustrating answer is it depends. Depends on the day, depends on what's going on, depends on what happened. A lot of it is just responding to things that happen. We get complaints escalated that can't be handled by departments or employees, and so we got to help guide through those complicated matters. Looking at policies, implementation and development. So, any given day I'll be reviewing a new policy or revising an existing policy. We do a lot of response to board of commissioners. So if they've got a question, they'll pass it on to Kim, and she'll pass it on to me for research. So it's sort of the bigger things that are harder to really put your finger on, which makes it really hard to explain what I do.
Yeah, it's the generic maybe term is as assigned by the county manager.
That's
essentially.
Right. That's right.
Things that are
assigned. Yeah, exactly.
But I know what I could see if somebody asked me what you do. I would say he has a management role over some departments and things, and then also some maybe task-oriented things, which we'll get into. But your departments are?
Library, Veterans, Solid Waste, and Parks and Rec. And I'm also liaison to Health Department, Soil and Water, and Cooperative Extension. And recently was assigned to Animal Services last July, when they were assigned to the Office of the County Manager.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then the other part of that kind of jumps around into the grants world or into different tasks or projects. And one of those things, we're gonna come back and talk later sometime about what we've been working on with broadband and all that. And that's going to be ongoing for a little while. Mm-hmm. But one of the other things I feel like that you've been assigned to is the opioid settlement, distribution process, whatever we want to call that.
Yeah, so the opioid settlement funding is and yeah, you're right. I have my departments, and I have my other duties as assigned, and then I've got several projects that I'm working on, and the opioid settlement funding is one of those projects. The opioid settlement came out of a distributor settlement with the several states' attorneys general, including our own Josh Stein, and last July 2021, the state signed. The state developed the memorandum of agreement, and the county signed on to that MOA, and it resulted in about $750 million being distributed to the state of North Carolina. Of that,
it's 85%.
85% is being distributed directly to counties and municipalities. And so that's a huge benefit of the North Carolina settlement, is that it is directly going to the places who are on the front lines dealing with the opioid overdose epidemic.
Do you know how the counties and municipality funding was divided up? Was it population based, or did they have a sort of an algorithm that they followed that?
Yeah, so actually there's an attachment to the MOA that describes how the money was divided up. But yeah, basically each county is assigned a percentage based on population and some other factors.
Okay.
And so the Franklin County is getting just over $3.2 million over 18 years. We've already received our initial disbursements, 3 so far for calendar year 2022, and we've had our public meeting in October of 2022.
I think too, it's not really the way they're going to distribute it. It's not necessarily they didn't take $3.2 million and divide it up over however many payments. It kind of goes up and down a little bit. I know that we'll see some higher payments, and then we'll see some lower payments, and as it kind of tapers off. Looking at the whatever you call that graph.
Yeah, correct. So it's supposed to be the way they're describing it as front loaded, and if you look at the distribution schedule. The first year we're supposed to get just over 400,000, and then it sort of settles in around between 200,000 and 300,000 for the next 3 years, and then it drops down to between 100,000 and 200,000 for the next 14 years or so.
Which kind of makes sense. I mean, if you think about, I guess they're looking for in those first initial years the setting up of whatever you're going to use it on, and then sort of the maintenance over
That's
the
right.
course. So.
That's right. Gives you some flexibility for if you're planning on doing a capital item or, like you said, setting up programs. But these are it's a huge deal for the state, and the state also retained obviously 15% of that $750 million. So they've got some money that they're going to be setting up grants. So we need to keep an eye on that so that we can leverage this funding for additional state funding, which is finding the best way to most directly deal with the opioid overdose epidemic and provide services to our community where they need it.
And I know that the state was kind of requiring this sort of public meeting workshop element, which is really good to have. And in October, it wasn't just a meeting where you came and listened to a speaker. There was that part. You had an expert come in who described sort of what you can use with it and talked about it very in depth. But there was another element to that meeting that was kind of interesting that involved the public showing up and being able to participate. And that was, I think you had 3 breakout groups that got to kind of talk about some things and come up with some different ideas, brainstorming in a sort, not
right.
sort of free-form brainstorming, but a little bit of a
sure.
guided brainstorming.
Yeah, so the public meeting I thought went really well. I was excited for the turnout, and the goal of the public meeting was to get people who are involved in the opioid epidemic to sit down and describe what they're currently doing, where they see gaps, and sort of come up with some ideas on where we should use this money to support existing efforts. And so that was the I'd probably say one of the more important parts of the public input meeting was getting everybody together to I guess as much as anything is inventory what is already going on in the county. It was important for our guest speaker, Nady Sachdeva, who's I'll call her the opioid czar. She's an expert. She's been working in this industry for a really long time. She worked for the state for a while. She worked for Duke University for a while. But she framed the problem in a way that got everybody on the same page. And then from there, we were all able to talk about what is currently going on and where we see some gaps. So it was really good to have the community turn out for that, and the people who are directly dealing with this had some really good ideas. I mean, if they're dealing with it, they know what they need, and so I'm happy to get that information, and then we'll get back before the board at some point with a report and recommendation for spending for the next year or two. But part of I'll dig a little bit into the MOA, the Memorandum of Agreement. The MOA requires a very detailed and transparent spending plan that's got to be adopted by the board. So we have to take to the board the actual initiatives that we're supporting, and to get into that a little bit, the MOA has an option A list and an option B list. The option A list is evidence-based strategies to deal with the opioid epidemic. Option B is less evidence-based, and so if you choose that option, you have to take a few extra steps in order to show that you need it. So there's a strategic planning process requirement, and then there's a more detailed reporting requirement because you have to show that it's actually directly affecting the issue. The option A list, the state has already said these are evidence-based. They on its face it does what it's supposed to do, and so you can do these without much additional study and reporting. So along with option A comes the requirement for the annual meeting, and so we've had that for our first year, and we'll sort of do we'll do that annually, obviously as required, but this next year it'll be to review what we've done over the past year and see where we need to go and need to make improvements. for the next year. And so we'll do that to kind of keep an eye on things, keep everything out in the open. And then there's a website where...
There's a lot of websites.
There's a lot of websites. You can go and actually see the spending plans for everybody.
Is that more powerful?
Yes,
NC.
That's it.
Okay.
More powerful NC.
Morepowerfulnc.org. Yes. Yeah. And there's a lot of things on there, actually.
Yes, there's a lot of useful information on there, and that's part of the transparency.
There's also
requirements.
NCopioidsettlement.org, a little bit more about the resources, and a lot of these websites kind of interconnect, but it has a lot of the information, the dashboards for the payment schedules and things like that, which can be very helpful. And it sounds like I was just thinking about too, if you're thinking, wow, why haven't we gotten some of this stuff already kind of figured out? It sounds like the MOU requires you to do a lot of work on the front end of how you're going to do, which takes a little bit longer to get together than to just say, hey, we're going to do this and we'll figure out how we justify it later. You have to do all that in the beginning for almost the entire.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. This isn't something you just start cutting checks for. You have to come up with a plan, a time period. You have to identify the strategy that you're addressing, and then you have to get board approval for those expenditures.
So we'll see. So the process going forward, there'll be that presentation, but yearly there'll be I don't know, what do you call it after? It's like a public meeting?
Yeah, it'll be an annual public meeting. The key there is that we invite the towns, so invite representation from the towns. And this past year, we were fortunate. We had Youngsville, we had Franklinton, we had Bunn, Lewisburg, all showed up. And so it was good to have the communities represented, as well as the frontline. We had some mental health professionals show up. We had the community paramedics, which is an important initiative that have already been doing. And then obviously our probably the most common frontline group is the sheriff's office. They have to respond on a regular basis. The jail. So it affects multiple departments and offices within the county, including health department, DSS. All of these offices really, get the brunt of this issue. So
yeah, and it's a good shout out to if you're interested about the community paramedic program. If you go back, I believe it was the second episode we did. There's a community paramedic program podcast episode that I talk with both of the community paramedics, and they really explain what they do and kind of give you a sense of what they're seeing every day. It's a good episode. You should go back and check it out. So we got these public meetings. Is there anything else looking forward down the road that we'll see, or is it pretty much smooth sailing, annual check-in meeting, and then hopefully good results and implementation down the road?
That's right. I mean, okay. Yeah, we're counting on good results and implementation, mostly because we're using the evidence-based strategies. We're not trying to reinvent anything. So using evidence-based strategies, we feel really good about our chances at having some success, showing some improvement. A lot of the gaps we find are finding care for people who are suffering with opioid use disorder. So they often, unfortunately, end up in jail, which is not the right place for them. And so providing those resources in the jail to find them resources outside of the jail, so that they don't end up back in jail.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But this is something that affects families. So if it's not just in a vacuum. It affects the families. If they end up overdosing, then you have community paramedic involvement. You've got sheriff's office involvement, EMS, and so it's a pretty big deal. and really they're just struggling. So
it's one of those difficult things where not all cases are the same. It's a multi-faceted little thing that you have to really. It's challenging, and it's one of the good things to have these resources come in is to help those challenges, because you don't know what type of situation, because it could go in a lot of different ways. So
that's right.
Having something that's resilient and be able to do the maximum amount of good will be helpful. And we have a lot of this information on our website. If we don't have it there, then we have links to websites that have even more. On the Franklin County NC.gov website, under About Us and Initiatives, there's we got a page, some stuff for broadband there that we're constantly updating. And then there's a page for the opioid settlement, and it gives you a little bit of background about the opioid settlement, what North Carolina's getting, what Franklin County's getting, the MOU, MOA, different resources, including the presentation that was given on October 3rd at Franklin Plaza for the public meeting and workshop, and then all kinds of information about those websites we mentioned earlier, and including, there's also part of those is if you know someone who is struggling with opioid addiction, there are some resources there to sort of you can help get them connected with, and all of that sort of thing. So try to make it as easily navigated so that you can get the resources that you need. So I feel like we've kind of hit all of the opioid settlement stuff that we have for now. Mm-hmm. We'll have more coming later.
That's right.
We'll this will be part one. There'll be another one come later, and we'll discuss sort of that. And hopefully, when we get around to that, we'll start to we'll get our initial plans put out there when they're approved by the board, mm-hmm. and hopefully we'll be able to come back and kind of look at the results and see some great things happening in Franklin County. That's pretty good. That was very informative, and even though I created some of the stuff on the website, I learned more listening to kind of get a little further into it, and some things popped in my mind that I didn't even think about before. So, so that was good, and we're going to have Will back on sometime this spring to give us some more update on broadband and where we're going there. I mentioned those resources are also on our website. I think that's all we have left. That was a very long and informative thing. We got to learn a lot about Will and a lot about the opioid settlement fund process. The Franklin County NC podcast is produced by Franklin County as a public service to better inform and provide timely and relevant information. Tune in for more informative shows about what is happening in Franklin County. Subscribe to this podcast on your favorite platform, like or rate the podcast, and share it with your friends and family. To find out more about Franklin County NC, go to our website at www.franklincountync.gov and sign up for our email newsletter while you are there. For all of us here at Franklin County, I'm James Hicks, and we'll talk to you soon.